And when we're talking about arbitration, there are two types of arbitration, mandatory and voluntary. And why don't you read us a little case study, and then we'll make the determination whether or not it's mandatory or voluntary arbitration.
All right, well, here's the case study, Saul. Agent was approached by buyer to show them property. Buyer told the agent that they had been working with another licensee but did not have a buyer's agency agreement with them and that she was out of town. Buyer also stated that if the agent showed them property they liked, they would write the offer through him. The agent showed the property and the buyer made an offer, but guess what? They went through another agent. Is the agent entitled to a commission?
Well, it sounds like an agent-to-agent kind of deal here, so it seems to me it would be a mandatory as opposed to a voluntary arbitration.
It does involve the agents, but remember also that those agents are going to bring in the principals of their firm to handle the arbitration. But getting at the procuring cause aspect of it, we see the situation a lot, don't we, that where the buyer says, don't worry, you can trust me, I'll work with you, and then they find out that they go work with another real estate agent.
And then there's a claim, and it's a claim for commission, it's an arbitration situation, and probably a mandatory arbitration now.
And if you want to talk about lessening that risk, if the broker had a written agreement with that buyer and then maybe had somebody cover for them while they were out of town, they'd be in a lot better position. Without a written agreement, you are taking a risk, although procuring cause panel can decide the other way if there are enough facts.
So we could have a principal-to-principal mandatory arbitration. We could also have a realtor to non-member MLS subscriber, right?
Because remember that MLS is where you have that offer of compensation, and in some boards you don't have to be a member of the board to be a member of the MLS.
And then the voluntary side of arbitration.
Well, the client, if they agree, when arbitration is initiated by the realtor principal. It can be voluntary with the customer of a realtor and the realtor principal if they both agree. And the realtor principal and a non-member if they both agree. Now, often you find people wanting to agree because they look at arbitration as being faster, less expensive than the litigation process itself.
So we see it most often probably broker principal to broker principal arbitration of commission, but it can involve the public in a voluntary type of arbitration.
Correct.
Well, what happens if you lose? Can you appeal this?
Well, you know, you can appeal, but it's rather limited in scope. A lot of times you're looking at procedural errors. In some ethics hearings, it might be because of a misapplication of one of the standards that we talked about in one, in a arbitration, you generally can't appeal based you think that the award wasn't fair. But procedurally, you could, if you asked for a continuance and they decided not to give you a continuance, if you asked to produce some evidence and they wouldn't allow you to produce that evidence, if you're not provided what we call due process, that could be the basis for the appeal.
But it's pretty limited to be able to appeal.
Right.
And then we talked about another way to resolve a problem, which is a mediation, which is less confrontational than arbitration, which is less confrontational than litigation.
And I kind of predict here that mediation is going to be a much more popular mode of dispute resolution. And there's another method too that wasn't even mentioned here, and that's when one broker gets on the phone with another broker and says, hey, why don't we work this out? Rather than going through all of this, I've been on the other side, let's try to work it out. And they'll structure their own settlement without going through any type of these processes.